Hello students, this is a video on tag and using quotation marks for direct evidence. As you watch this video, you should be taking notes on your handout. So it is on the back side of the first page of your handout under Independent Station. So each time you see a slide in this video, you should be taking notes. And the numbers on the slides match with the numbers on your handout. Please make sure you're completing each section fully before you move on to the next section. If you miss something, you can always rewind this to go back and get it before you move on. Number 1, so you should be taking notes by number 1 on your handout. If you copy evidence directly from a source, or if you paraphrase any information from a source not written by you, you should cite it using tag, or TAG. Tag stands for title, author, and genre. The title of the source should be capitalized. The title of a book, website, or film should be italicized. The title of an article, poem, short story, or chapter should be in quotation marks. If you forget this, you can refer to the poster at the back of our classroom about tag. A stands for author. The author is the name of the person who wrote the source of the evidence. Names should always be capitalized. Many websites do not provide an author. If no author is provided on an online source, you can list the name of the website instead. G stands for genre. The genre is what kind of source your evidence is from, such as newspaper, website, encyclopedia, book, journal, video, or speech. And as you can see at the bottom here, we have an example that shows us the author of the article, the genre, which is an article, and then the title in orange here, the importance of reading. Please make sure that you finish taking all notes under section 1 on your handout before you move on to the next slide. Also important to remember, if you use evidence from a source and you forget to properly cite the source, it is plagiarism. Number 2, tagging evidence for literary analysis. Make sure you are taking notes on number 2 on your handout. So the first rule for tagging evidence for literary analysis is to use tag, which again stands for title, author, genre. So the next rule is to include the page number from the book you are citing the evidence from. So for this unit, we'll be citing evidence from The Giver. So you would be including the page number from The Giver. The third rule is to put the evidence from the novel into quotation marks, which look a little like this. And the very last rule is don't repeat the entire tag after the first time that you use it. You can just include the page number after the first time you tag your evidence for literary analysis. So for example, you may write one piece of evidence from Lois Lowry's novel, The Giver, is on page 26, which says Jonas wrote at a leisurely pace, glancing at the bike ports beside the buildings to see if he could spot Asher's. He didn't often do his volunteer hours with his friend because Asher frequently fooled around and made serious work a little difficult. So you can see here, this student has included the author's name, Lois Lowry, the title, which is The Giver, and the page number, page 26. And then he has put quotation marks around the evidence from the novel. If he were to cite another piece of evidence from the same novel, The Giver, all he would have to do the second time would be to say the page number and then include the direct evidence in quotation marks. Please make sure you're done with section 2 before you move on to the next slide. Number 3, quotation marks. Please make sure you're taking notes on your handout for section 3. So you have to use quotation marks around evidence you copy directly from the text. There are certain rules you must follow when using quotation marks. And while you're reading a book, you need to pay attention to the way authors use quotation marks to show when a character is speaking. So you can see here that the author has included quotation marks around the beginning of when the character is speaking and the end of when the character is speaking. And this applies to when you use direct evidence that you copy from the text. Please make sure you're finished taking notes for section 3 before you move on to the next slide. Number 4, applying quotation marks. Please make sure you're taking notes on your handout by number 4. So you can see here that this student has applied the quotation marks at the beginning, again, at the end. You can see that he's used the punctuation at the beginning outside of the quotation mark, and that the punctuation at the end is inside of the quotation mark. So to use quotation marks on your computer, you can type them by pressing Shift and the quotation mark button on your keyboard. So you can see that here. So you'd be pressing Shift and the quotation mark button on your keyboard. Number 5, punctuating direct evidence. Please make sure you're taking notes by number 5. So in this example, we can see some application of rules for using quotation marks. The first rule is use them only around the direct evidence that you copy from a text. And you should only be using complete sentences as evidence. So you can see here that the quotation mark is not around the tag. It's only around the quote that the student copied directly from the text. You should also remember the second rule, that before a direct quotation, the comma should go outside of the quotation mark. And you can see that here. The comma is outside of the quotation mark, and there's a space between the comma and the quotation mark. When you're using quotation marks at the end of a direct quotation, you should leave the punctuation inside of the quotation mark. So you can see here the student has placed the period before the quotation mark or inside the quotation mark because this is the end of the sentence. Please make sure you pause and review this if you need to finish taking notes on section 5 of your handout. All right, are you ready to practice what you learned? If you're having trouble, you can rewind or watch this video again. But if you are finished, you may go to iexcel.com and practice these skills. You can access this list on the digital agenda under Independent Station, and you can refer to your notes as you complete your iExcel